So the Super Bowl is finally over. It was a pretty awesome one, might I add. And you might be thinking, Mike, what do I do now that Sundays don't have football anymore? Do I take part in another sport? Do I go outside? Do I finally start paying attention to my wife? Dude, no, because thankfully there is a brand new football league starting in a few weeks from now, and it's called the USFL. Now, here's the thing about spring football, guys. I actually got my start to my career on Mikerophone with content on the XFL. So it's very near and dear to my heart, but I really care about your opinion. So if you want more USFL content, go to the comment section down below, say more USFL content, please, and leave a like on this video. And now that we get all that out of the way, break! Mike check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? You might be thinking to yourself, Mike, why on earth would we care about another spring football league that's probably going to go bankrupt? Well, here's the thing, man. I don't think any business is created equal, and I feel like given the way the last two spring football leagues ended, there was actually some unfortunate stuff that ended both of those leagues, and they were completely different. In the case of the AAF, they were overly dependent on becoming the official developmental league of the NFL, and they had absolutely no funding, which was really unfortunate. I really liked the product they put forth. I loved some of the concepts they came up with, like the Sky Judge and other stuff of that sort, and I felt like ultimately having a spring football league would have been really awesome. The problem is, in order to have a spring football league go down, you need a shit ton of money, dude, and I mean a lot of money. But as a football fan, I think it behooves all of us to root for this league to take off, because that way we'll have football year round, and we'll actually have an opportunity to see some really cool storylines form. When you look at the last time a spring football league was prominent, it was the XFL, and they were absolutely crushing it before, unfortunately, the COVID pandemic came by and ruined everything. But one of the best stories of that entire league was none other than a man by the name of PJ Walker, an absolutely electrifying human being that ended up winning XFL MVP and ended up reuniting with his head coach, Matt Rule, on the Carolina Panthers. Now you might be thinking, Mike, who the hell cares about all this? But ultimately, a spring football league ended up changing a man's life. And hopefully we can see some more stories that kind of resemble the ones that Kurt Warner had in years past. Although I don't think the USFL is going to get anywhere near the level it was in the 1980s, which we're going to make a separate video on that because this league is absolutely insane. They were poaching talent from the NFL at a specific point. For now, here's everything you need to know about the new startup league. The USFL is officially going to come back in 6 days from now on February 22nd with its inaugural player selection meeting or draft. During the 2-day event, 8 teams and their respecting coaching staff will have a chance to mold their rosters as the league's stars and marquee matchups take shape. The way it's going to work is there's going to be 6 phases. The first one being quarterback selections, the second being offensive skill positions, then offensive linemen, then defensive front 7 players and defensive backs, and then any position. Per multiple player sources, each USFL player is going to get paid $600 per week for training camp, $1,500 per week if they make it to the practice squad, and $4,500 per week if they make it to the active roster, in addition to victory bonuses, which if you ask me is pretty freaking solid. The league is going to be broadcasted exclusively on Fox, and for those of you guys concerned about continuity, get a load of this. The NFL has helped Fox think through the structure and the rules of play for the USFL, and they control the digital rights. According to Fox's CEO, outside investors in the league have effectively underwritten the league for the next 2 or 3 years. So they are ambitious but disciplined in its investment in the USFL. You need to bear in mind, man, if you want to take part in a spring football league or you want to own a spring football league, the investment phase of the business is absolutely vicious. The XFL in its inaugural run back all the way when Vince McMahon was running it, the league's assets and liabilities were in the range of $10 million to $50 million, and eventually it was sold to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, this is fantastic news considering the fact that I am very tired of being invested in new teams and new leagues, and unfortunately not really getting an opportunity to see these leagues really take off. Now, you might be wondering who is going to be involved in this league that I actually care about. Well, let's start with an individual that is literally part of almost every single spring football league as of late. That's none other than Trent Richardson. Trent Richardson is a household name for college football fans as he won 2 BCS championships at Alabama. He was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year in 2011 and 2012, selected 3rd overall in the NFL draft, and that's when things started to go south for Trent. Although he was a weight room warrior, he started his career with Cleveland, then would get traded to Indianapolis, and by 2016 was out of the NFL. He would then try to latch on with the Saskatchewan Roughriders of the CFL and the AAF's Birmingham Iron, where he would become the league leader in rushing touchdowns. Up next, we have Jarrell Pressey, another individual that was a star in the AAF and the XFL, averaging 4.5 yards per carry on 42 attempts. In 2019, he had the most rushing yards in the AAF, and a year later, he spent time as a DC defender, averaging 4.5 yards per carry on 42 attempts. Next, we have Devion Smith, who is very familiar to Pressey in the sense that he was part of the AAF and the XFL. He had 345 rushing yards with the Orlando Apollos in 2019, 365 with the Tampa Bay Vipers in 2020, but he wouldn't be able to generate any NFL interest in 2021 and would join the CFL instead. That's because, to be honest, I wouldn't expect any running back to really generate any NFL interest. I would look more at quarterbacks, wide receivers, and maybe even cornerbacks and safeties. And then, of course, there's Corey Coleman, the wide receiver of Baylor. He's most famous for demanding a trade from the Cleveland Browns on Hard Knocks and then getting traded, and well, unfortunately, reality struck for him shortly after. His rookie season was decent. His numbers dropped off in 2017, and then he would get bounced from team to team. He was on a roster as recently of 2020, but he hasn't caught a single pass since 2018. So this is kind of Corey Coleman's final hope, but I'm actually expecting him to tear it up in the USFL, and if he doesn't, then that's cause for concern. Finally, we have Moritz Boringer, a tight end from Germany. He was originally drafted in the 2016 NFL draft by the Minnesota Vikings, making him the first European player to be drafted without any collegiate experience. Prior to the NFL, he was in a German football league, and he would unfortunately never appear in an NFL game. He would spend 5 seasons on the practice squad, and he's the type of player that I want to see succeed because I want Europe to have a presence in the NFL. This is just a brief overview of the USFL. I'm going to be coming out with the documentary and explaining everything you need to know, but for now, I just wanted a primer and a little bit of a feeler to see how interested you guys would be in USFL content. Let me know in the comment section if you enjoyed, and aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.